Hi guys, this is Vidya and I hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk about some things that I don't say to my child. These are all personal, these are my opinion, and every parent is different, so is their parenting style. The first one is sharing is caring, or please share, or something along those lines. And we say it so commonly that we don't even realize that we're saying it, and I catch myself saying it sometimes too. But the reason I avoid it is because toddlers and babies, their brains are not developed enough to share. And evolutionarily, like throughout centuries, protecting ourselves, like being selfish, is what served us. It made us survive, right? So being possessive is one of the first thing a baby learns, and sharing naturally doesn't come until they're about 2 or 3 years old. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But parents assume that unless we teach them to share, they will never learn, and throughout their life they'll be selfish, which is not true. And part of it is because we want to look good as parents. Like when our child is not sharing their toy and we don't say anything to them, we look like a bad parent who's not teaching our child to share, right? So part of the reason we say sharing is caring, please share, is because we want to look like a good parent. But if we take ourselves out of the picture, we'll realize that our child will learn to see that the other child wants to play with it too. So we want to teach our child to recognize another child's emotions and give it to them out of kindness, not because we told them to. Imagine how it feels like if you're working on an important report or a presentation on your laptop and suddenly someone says, okay, my turn, and just takes it away. It doesn't feel so good, right? It's so annoying. And it's the same for kids. They are not just playing with a toy or passing time. They are completely engrossed in it. It is their work. So if you suddenly take it away by force, they're not learning how to be kind to the other child. They are just, their world comes crashing down and they are very upset, obviously, right? So look at it through that way. And instead of saying please share, try to acknowledge the other kid's emotions so that your child sees that the other kid is upset. For example, if Vikrant is playing with something that he loves, he's totally into it, and there's another kid who's showing interest, for a minute or two initially I kind of take a back seat and see if Vikrant is almost done playing with it, and he'll just give it to the other kid because he looks interested. He'll see that he is showing interest. Sometimes he's not interested in sharing, like he wants it because he is so into it. In that case, that's fine too. And if the other kid is starting to be really upset or starting to cry, then I'll help Vikrant see it. Like I'll say that looks like the other kid is really upset because he wants the toy, right? I'll not pass a judgment saying that, okay, you need to share because the other kid is upset. I'll try to help him see the other kid's emotions, right? And then sometimes Vikrant will look at the child then and he'll suddenly snap out of what he was doing, and he may or may not decide to share at that point, which is also okay. And if the other kid is getting really anxious, I'll try to give them a similar toy or something else to distract. Or at that point Vikrant realizes that, you know, I would like to help him stop crying, so he'll just give it to the child. And then he feels a sense of accomplishment because he shared his toy out of his own will, right? Not because mom told him to. And that makes him feel good. And then I say that was really nice of you to share your toy. Look, now the other child is so happy that you shared. So I try to take myself out of the picture. The only reason I would be in the picture is to help Vikrant see what the other child is feeling, if that makes sense. The second thing is stop crying. Now I have to catch myself all the time because toddlers' tantrums can be really annoying. They can get on our nerves, and sometimes we wish that they would just be quiet, right? But asking them to just stop crying is just dealing with the symptom and not the cause. So I try to and if you say stop crying, you're asking them to stop expressing their emotions. They want to let their emotions out. That's what babies and kids do, and we kind of expect them to already regulate their emotions like an adult. Well, they're not going to. They're children, right? And asking them to stop crying is just, you know, putting a stopper on their feelings, their emotions, whatever it is. Even if they're having a tantrum, it's because of a reason. So getting to the bottom of it is more important than just treating the symptom at the surface level, like just getting them to stop crying. I even try not to distract my son when he's crying, because that again, yeah, he may stop crying temporarily, but the reason is not resolved. Sometimes distraction is the only thing that works, and especially in public places. But other times I let him cry. It sounds very cruel, but I let him cry while being there, while holding him, and while letting him figure out what he's feeling, right? The next one along those same lines is big boys don't cry. I don't know, I hope people don't say this anymore, but I think they do. That's why I wanted to mention it. This is a big no in our home, because big boys can cry and so can big girls. Anyone can cry. That is a way of expressing emotions. And if we say big boys don't cry or big girls don't cry, we're just, again, we're not treating the cause. We are just trying to make peace and trying to, make it quiet for that moment. We're not really trying to get behind it. So sometimes, you're overwhelmed. I get it. Life is hard with children. So sometimes we say things like that, but constantly I would avoid saying that. The next one is say please. Now I do try to teach my son manners. It's not like I just let him be wild, but I don't force him to say please every single time, because we don't, right? Do we say please every single time we want something? No. The best way to let your child learn manners is by modeling it. So if we say please and thank you and you're welcome, they're going to do that too. So in our daily lives, when I'm talking to my husband, if we are talking to each other and I want something and I say please and he gives it to me, I say thank you, he says you're welcome. If the child hears these kind of conversations, they are going to pick it up without forcing it. And sometimes if they don't say it, that's okay too. And when you're saying please, it's not just a word. You're asking someone to give it kindly. And when you're saying thank you, it's not just a word again. You're saying you have a little bit of gratitude for something that the other person has given you. Even if it is small everyday things, you want your child to say these words because they mean it, right? If we have to remind them to say please and thank you every single time, they're going to say it mechanically, not because they're feeling grateful, not because they're saying thank you because they appreciate someone doing something for them, or saying please because they recognize that someone has to go out of their way to do something for them. So maybe these are minor things, but I really feel strongly about not enforcing them to say please or thank you. Usually if there's someone else involved who might get offended if we don't say please and thank you, I just say it for him, and he watches me and he'll say it sometimes too. And the important thing is not to pressure them, because younger babies and kids are still shy when it comes to others. So I would get down on his level and I would say, let's say thank you together, and he'll usually just chime in. That gives them a little bit more confidence, and then as they keep getting older, they learn to say please and thank you when they really feel it, and that's amazing. Like when you do something for them and they say thank you mommy for doing that, and that would be like, that's the true essence of thank you and please, right? So that's the next one. I don't know which number I'm at, but the next thing I don't say to my son is only if you eat food you'll get something. I've touched upon this in my other video, which I'll link below, which is about good eating habits. But only if you eat your vegetables you'll get a cupcake or something. It'll make them think that dessert is like a reward for getting through this meal with gross vegetables, and you don't want your child to think that, right? So sometimes when Vikrant wants a treat before he has his meal, I'll say, now it's dinner time and then it'll be dessert time. Dessert is always going to be more delicious. It's always going to be more tempting than broccoli, right? So you don't want to reinforce that by, having your food as a punishment for getting to dessert. Next, I try to avoid labeling my child like you're too loud, or you're too naughty, or you're a messy kid, you're a bad eater. That's a big one. And it also applies when you're talking about your child to someone else, even when they're babies, because trust me, they're picking up everything, because their sense of identity depends on what you say to them, right? Or about them. Every single word you say, every single definition you give about your child is going to be absorbed by them into their personality, right? So I would be careful of using labels for your child. Instead, I try to give labels to the situation. let's say Vikrant has made a big mess, which happens several times a day. Instead of saying, "You're so messy," I try to say, "That's a big mess. Do you want me to help you clean it up?" So that labels a situation, and it tells him that no matter what he has done, he is not that. He just made that happen. I try to avoid negative labels, obviously, but even with positive labels, I try to catch myself from using them too often. Like it's easier when it's something negative, but when your child has done something clever, something smart, or figured something out, we tend to say, "Oh, you are so smart," because every parent thinks that their kid is the smartest kid in the world, right? So instead of saying, "You are the smartest kid in the world, you are a genius," I try to say, "That was very clever. I like how you figured that out on your own. You want to show me how you did it?" I try not to go over the top with my appreciation, or he'll start identifying with that. So he shouldn't think that only when he does something positive I love him. So I try to avoid saying things like, "I love you so much because you wrote something, or picked up something, or put your toys away." So my love for him is not connected to what he does or does not do. So that "I love you" doesn't come in the same sentence as "because you put your toys away." Next, I also try to avoid saying "that's for girls" or "that's for boys," whichever applies. Boys and girls are inherently different, right? Obviously, they don't need us to amplify these differences. They don't need us to make these stereotypes even stronger, like pink is for girls and blue is for boys. They don't need us to enforce all of these. They have their differences, and it's okay to have those differences, but there's no need to add on to that. The last thing I try to avoid saying is "that's not how you do it," or "this is not the right way to do it," or "let me show you how to do it." But whenever I present my son with a toy, let's say a puzzle, he doesn't see the puzzle as something he needs to solve right away. He'll look at all the pictures, he'll look at the texture of the pieces, he'll look at the size of it, the weight of it. So he needs to do all of that, and then he'll see the puzzle. As adults, we form set patterns on how to do things. If it's like a puzzle, we put things a certain way and then we are done with it. Or if it's a set of blocks, we build something and we're done with that. But not children. They're brand new at exploring the world, right? So if it's a set of blocks, they will learn how to stack them, and then they'll topple them to see how they fall. And that's not a wrong thing. They need to learn to explore different ways of interacting with their environment. So I try to avoid setting rules on how he should play with a certain thing or how he should do a certain activity. I try to take a step back and watch him. As long as he's exploring happily, I'm okay. But when he starts showing signs of frustration, or when he's about to give up, or he's about to have a meltdown because he can't figure it out, that's when I step in and say, "How about we put this peg in this hole and see how that fits perfectly?" So that I take into account his different perspective as well, and then I show him my perspective on that. So that way he doesn't have to think that there's only one way of doing things, and that is something we need to have our entire lives, right? That is where creativity comes from pushing the boundaries, from finding alternate uses for things. So yeah, those were the things that I try not to say to my child. If you've sticked around to the end, thank you so much. And as a bonus, I'd like to add one thing that I do say to my son every single day, multiple times, and that is, "That's interesting." So instead of labeling things quickly like ugly, beautiful, scary and whatnot, I try to say "that's interesting," and that usually gets him thinking about his own description for what is happening. So for example, if he sees a spider and comes running to me, instead of saying "that's a scary spider," I try to say "that's an interesting looking spider," and help him describe it. I'll say "that's bigger than the other spiders you've seen, and that's got bigger legs," right? And then we'll try to catch it in a jar or something and observe it. So he'll find his own way of describing the spider. He'll say, mommy, that spider has 6 legs or something like that. So it helps him not form those opinions that I have personally and form his own opinions instead. I hope you found this video useful, and I'm sorry if it was too long. I wasn't initially going to share this because parenting is such a personal journey and it's very hard to make, guidelines that apply to everyone, and these are just what I believe in. But I made a community post and asked you guys if you wanted to know, and like, you guys overwhelmingly said yes, so I thought I'd share. But I'll see you in another video of mine. Until then, take care. Bye.